Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, gonna go over the trades that we took on Friday as well as the game plan going into this week. So when it comes to SPY, on Friday we ended up losing this bearish trend that we had going for a few days. You can see right here on Friday we ended up closing below the 50 at the first 30-minute candle. This 10 SMA crossed below the 50 turned down, and that was pretty much telling us the bears were losing this trend. We did have some news on Friday, so that's kind of why this trend didn't really last. Going into the day, we did have that news at I think 10 o'clock, and then Trump was on I think at 11 or 12, so you couldn't really be confident in this trend holding. So this chart ended up crossing negative, and a lot of times when that happens we see a opposite move in the premium, so that would be on the call side. So when we flip to the call side on the 645 calls, we actually ended up flipping bullish. So 10 SMA cross above the 50. This 50 SMA is still kind of down. We'll kind of have to see how we open up tomorrow. I'd love to see this 50 SMA curl up a little bit, and then at that point market would be bullish, and you're only focused on the long side. So if we do open bullish tomorrow, you're just going to want to look for a 0 DT cross on the 5-minute time frame. If that 50 SMA gets a loss tomorrow and we cross negative on the calls, then you're going to be looking for a put cross. So that's pretty much the game plan going into tomorrow when it comes to SPY. I didn't trade SPY on Friday. I was more focused on the individual tickers. So on the higher time frames on SPY as well, we did hit some key areas right here. We're at the 4-hour 50, which is a strong point, and then we're at the daily 50 SMA as well. So there's still a chance we do get back above this 50 SMA as it is curled up. So I wouldn't be really too concerned of this 50 SMA unless this chart does cross negative. And then when we look at the monthly contracts on SPY, I went over this last couple of days, and I told you guys that we're gonna need a few more days to kind of see if this chart does cross negative. And right now there's really nothing bearish about this chart. We ended up popping back above that 50 SMA, getting a closure above it, and we weren't able to cross negative. So that was pretty much what I told you guys I was looking for going into the next couple of days, is to see if this chart either slams back above and we get a closure back above the 10, the 50, or even just the 50 SMA in this case. That's the more important part. Or we end up getting a couple closures below the 50 SMA turns down, 10 crosses below the 50, and then we see a move lower. So that didn't happen. We actually this chart looks a lot more bullish when we look at the higher time frames. Again, I'm not sure exactly the contract we're gonna have. I changed this to the 645s just because on Friday that's what we had, I believe. I'm not sure what SPY's at the moment, but that might change the 650s depending on where we open up. But so far there's really no reason to be bearish. We have the 30-minute cross, and the higher time frames look more bullish than bearish on the monthly contracts. So that's pretty much my thoughts on SPY, and game plan going into tomorrow is for that. When it comes to individual stocks, on Friday we took Intel. I was eyeing this one up for a couple days. I told you guys this was one that I was watching, and if we look on the monthly contracts, you could see why this was a good setup. So we ended up getting this cross of the 10, the 50 here on the monthly time frame. On the daily chart, this is a significant time frame when it comes to these crosses. So we ended up getting this 10 crossing the 50 on this day right here. Was 8/21, so Thursday. There was no entry yet because the 10 SMA didn't cross the 50. And then on Friday we finally got the cross. We hit the 50, and the contracts were around 120 when I ended up getting in this, and it looked really good for a swing because the risk is so small on it. So we're really close to that 50 SMA, and if we close below it, you stop out. As long as we hold it, you can continue to hold the swing. So Intel, that's what we took on Friday, and we caught a solid move out of it. I'm just gonna show the last screenshot I had of this, but I think it was up 110% at one point. Yeah, here I'll slide it over so you can see this, but yeah, we were up 107% at one point. I mean, it still looks good going into this week. This is kind of just the start of the move in my opinion, because we just got the monthly cross. It got a little bit of a move on Friday up to 1.7, and usually when we get these monthly crosses, we do have that multi-day continuation of the trend, and we could see some really big moves out of it. And if you guys have been watching the videos, you can see the different types of move that the higher time frames, when we cross in this daily chart on the monthly time frame, or on the monthly contract, that sometimes we just trend up and up for a lot of days because we finally got that flip of the trend on the higher time frame. And then also when it comes to the weekly contract, it is crossed, but it does look a little weird because this 50 SMA the last 30 minutes ended up sloping down, or the last like hour, the 50 just went from being straight up to pointing down. So that's the only bad thing about this trade, is that 50 SMA is sloped down. Other than that, I mean, like, the higher time frames do look really good. The 2 hours crossing, the 4 hours still crossed here, close above the 10 SMA. I mean, there's nothing going on in the daily really, but pretty much all the time frames look pretty solid, besides like the 30-minute. If this 30-minute could straighten out and this 50 SMA could slope back up, I really do like this going into Monday. Even if you're not, playing the 30-minute cross, just off of like that daily chart, I still really like this for a swing. So, even though the 30-minute 50 SMA is down, with how everything else looks, it still looks like a really good trade, and that's why I'm still holding this going into Monday, just because the higher time frame just crossed on the daily chart for the monthlies, looks really good for higher. So that's what we got going on for Intel. JPM is the one that I'm really liking. I really wish I saw this on Friday, because you could see what's going on here. 10 SMA crossing the 50 on the weeklies, and we ended up getting this dip right here to the 50. That would have been your spot to add. I mean, contracts were at like 125 when we got that dip. 50 SMAs at 120. I mean, not much risk on that trade at all if you did see this on Friday. If there's not too much of a gap up, I would 100% take an entry on this. I mean, we got the cross of the SMAs here on the 300 calls. It looks really good for higher going into this week. And then the 1 hour is just crossing there. 2 hour we're right at, but I'm not really concerned about it. I'm not, like, the 2 hour, like I said, it's not a time frame that I'm ever really concerned about. It's more so the the initial 30-minute chart. That's like the big resistance point, 30-minute 50, and then you have the 4 hour and the daily charts, which are the major areas of resistance. The 2 hour is not really one that, if we're at it and other time frames are in sync, it's not gonna be something I'm worried about. So JPM, that's one that I do really like going into the week. And then Apple, again, if we pull up the monthly contracts on Apple, I've been going over this for a while, but this is the wrong contract. Oh, wait, no, it's not. If we go to the daily here, you can see what's going on. We're sitting at major support on it. 10 SMA crossed the 50, 50 sloped up. We're right at the 50 SMA on the monthlies. This is like super strong area of support on Apple. So I'm not sure what contracts we're going to get again. They're probably all pretty similar, but again, this looks really good for a swing as long as this 50 SMA holds. We get a closure below it, then obviously that wouldn't be valid anymore. But the risk to reward on this trade, it's there. If we could get this 30-minute chart to cross on Apple tomorrow, I'd 100% recommend taking this trade, because we have the monthly chart sitting at the 50, and all we need now is this confirmation of the weekly trend to flip on the 30-minute, and this will look really good. I mean, we get that 30-minute cross. This is pretty much an A+ setup. Higher time frames, there's really nothing going on. The 4-hour chart does look a little bad just because it is going negative, but if we did get the 30-minute cross, it's something that I would take, just because that monthly contract is sitting at such major support. So Apple, it's another one to watch. And then Tesla, 30-minute chart is just starting to cross here on the 30-minute. Tesla's going above the 50, but this is one of those scenarios where you don't take the entry, because the 50 SMA is still sloped down. You have to wait for it to flatten out and eventually curl up, is what is the most ideal scenario. The 1 hour 50 is breaking. 2 hour 50 is pretty flat. 4 hour 50 is a little sloped down. That's kind of where you'd end up selling a good chunk of this at, just because it is sloped down quite a bit, and we probably would reject that 50 SMA. But again, we're gonna have to see how we open up on it. Tesla is pretty crowded trade right now. I see a lot of people talking about it on Twitter. So when that happens, there's probably going to be some sort of dump, and then maybe we'll eventually get another 30-minute cross. But, if the 50 does curl, it's worth a shot. So that's kind of my thoughts on Tesla, Intel, JPM, Apple. So, yeah, those are some setups I'm watching going into the week, what we did on Friday. And, yeah, if you guys enjoyed, drop a sub. If you guys want to learn, join Discord down below. But, yeah, that's all I got. I'm out. Peace.